Thank you, Jane. I always forget, actually, the value of just 4 minutes of being quiet. And it's worth it for the next 7 hours, isn't it, of actually being a bit more centred and present. So, about half of you, maybe less actually, were here last time. So, for your benefit, as well as mine, and certainly for the new people, we're going to do a quick overview of what is plasma, what the heck is plasma, and what is nanocoating, what are nanomaterials, and what is GANs, and in this process we'll do some demos and hand out your kits as well to enable you to do it at home. So, then we'll have lunch, so you've seen this. Later we'll talk about agriculture power and make some powered devices for healing. So we've had the program already. So what is plasma? This is a big question, and actually the more I look into this subject, the more I hear from people who know more than me, the more I realise I know nothing. And I think that's often the case in life. The more we realise is behind the scenes, the more we realise we haven't a clue. So bear with us, and this is the model that Mr. Kesh is tries to explain and convey to us as a way of updating the current physical theories, the scientific theories about what life is made of. And it's not to throw out the old stuff, it's just building on the old. So I think it needn't be threatening to the establishment, to the orthodoxy, but it can be upset the apple cart. But it's another chapter, it's not a rewriting of the books. And so conventionally, plasma, it's unfortunate that the word plasma has been used in some ways, and that we associate it already with supercharged electric fields, and also with blood plasma, the physical plasma in the blood. But it's not that. So it's not the super hot stuff, supercharged gases and supercharged electric fields. It's actually cold. It's a cold field. It's light. So overall, we call it the universal field of pure potential, and it's just waiting to be imprinted upon by life. And that could be the mind of God, the mind of us, which is really a fractal of the same mind of the universe, and activated by our emotional connection with that thought and acted out through our physical body. So it's really that. It's this unmanifest dielectric inertia, this potential, this soup. Another word, the fundamental ether, principal light, the 0-point field. Chi is the agent of it as well. As you feel the energies, it's really the flow, which we call chi, which is the flow of this light. And so how does this light manifest? What levels are we seeing it through? Firstly, I like the Anthony Gormley sculpture called Quantum Cloud, I think it is. This man made a little scaffold to use. But for me, it really demonstrates beautifully in the way that true art should really, some fundamental truths of how we are just condensed out of these sort of strings and fragments of energy in the universe. And we come into our condensed existence fleetingly, and then we disperse back into the field, and off we go again to wherever we need to go next. And that reminds us also, I suppose, that maybe 99% of reality is invisible. But we're so used to, with our 5 matter state senses, just seeing 1%, and we think that's what there is. And but luckily, I think the cosmos and everything nature is really gearing up now to help push us out of that frequency, or as we call field strength, into a higher field strength where we can actually start to perceive beyond the boundaries of physical. And many people even here probably can already. But it's to develop those supersensory capacities as well through the chakras and the other senses above our 5. So that's an exciting part or side effect of any journey into this realm as well. It's just expanding our view of things. So the fundamental, what Mr. Kesh calls this principal light is magnetical rays. And it's not to confuse that with magnetism. So he uses the magnetical rays. So that's the rays of principal light with potential to manifest in either direction, in or out. And so they define these radiating rays radiating out from a 0 point, being magnetical in quality. They're giving out, and as these rays return to this point, they are called gravitational, which is when they're converging back to a point. And I was visualizing this the other day, and I don't know if this is right, but it felt like the magnetic and gravitational qualities are actually just where they're coming from one dimension into another. They're coming into this one, and then they're going back into the next one. through these little points, which are the plasma spheres, or these little balls of GANs. So that might be what defines the direction. They're traveling from a 0 point into this dimension and back out again. And in doing that, they're creating everything that we perceive. So that is just their polarity. Okay, so it's not about going clockwise or anti-clockwise even, because they can be doing that going out or in. So it's just where they're coming from and going to. And it's all an infinity loop from one state to another. And so this light, Mr. Keshe describes in 3 components, which is very similar to physics. Current physics calls things, it's perceived 3 different levels: matter, antimatter, and dark matter. Mr. Keshe says yes, but he defines these as principal matter, which is the antimatter. That's the unmanifest light. Then the transition matter, or dark matter, is transitional magnetic fields, which is where they're starting to come into matter state. And those are what the Ganses are. So we'll expand on that a bit later. And then they condense finally into matter. And that is what we call matter state magnetical fields, gravitational fields, electrical fields, and the EMF spectrum, really, the electromagnetic spectrum in this frequency of light speed. In atoms, they call it that the atom is made of an up quark, a down quark, and 2 down quarks. That's in the neutron. The neutron is made of these 3 subatomic particles according to conventional physics. So it's really saying, yeah, there are three flavors inside the neutron, but they're actually plasmatic fields. They're not more particles. Because you can go down and down and down and find smaller and smaller particles. Eventually you've got to give that up, and you've got to dissolve into just frequency and light. So this is where Mr. Keshe is taking it. And these 3, I've got my pointer. This is very, very tightly bound, the principal magnetical fields. This is the origin, the principal light. Then as those expand and unwind, like a clock spring, they're coming into the transitional state, like the GANs state. And then as they unwind further into our matter state spectrum, they're kind of even more unwound. So in a way, so this dimension is actually a weaker field, much weaker compared to the fundamental fields, which are behind the scenes. And that kind of makes sense. You imagine the universe. Imagine the Big Bang, not the Big Bang, it's a big whisper, according to Mr. Keshe. It's just a kind of out-breath. Like the Hindus say, the Vedas, it's an out-breath. And then an in-breath, so it's a magnetical expansion of the universe and a gravitational collapse. No explosions needed, because this is cold fusion or cold fission, cold expansion. So as they just unwind, this strength just becomes a vast expression of life and creativity. And then it condenses back into this tiny black hole, is another way of seeing black holes, and he just talks about that as well. Black holes being this really high concentration of these principal light fields, and then behind them is just another realm, another dimension. And this trinity is also visible in us. We've got our soul, is kind of related to these principal fields, which is the source. Our emotional body, you could say, is more linked to this transitional state where the idea from the soul manifests, it expands into a feeling, and then it expands further into physicality to become matter state. So this trinity helps carry us there too. And then in nature, it's manifest in the seed. It's like the soul, it's the imprint, the DNA, the matrix of the plant to be. As it germinates, as it's induced to germinate by water, which is the universal plasma as well, it's an incredible substance, then that seed expands into its germination or emotional stage, and then it manifests as the plant in physicality. So we've got the same trinity going through everything. And the octaves, we're also going through different octaves and different dimensions. So we can start here, and as we unwind through the universe, we've got different light speeds as different quantum speeds. And we're just experiencing light speed as what we call c in this dimension. But there are many, 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 many others. And Einstein said the same. He never said this was it. He just said the relativity of experience in this dimension is related to our light speed, which relates to our field strength experience. So I think where physics is stuck is misreading that as there is only one speed of light. But that's just here. We know that thought is instant, we know that, so that's another speed, that's another level, another field strength that's more subtle. Just one analogy, as above, so below. So through this we see that everything is a reflection of everything else, everything is a fractal expression of the fundamental source. And so we start with maybe a blue sky. So you can see that's the principal matter, that's the clear blue sky, that's the potential for the new day. And then as this field weakens into transition matter state, or dark energy, we get the clouds, which actually look very like the cloud of the Ganses there. That's a new type of cloud called asperitas. It looks very much like the plasma, which you can look at in the breaks. And then that weakens to matter state, when the clouds then weaken further into condensing into rain. So it's happening in this level as well as upstairs. So yeah, plasma, GANs, and matter. Okay. And then another quick analogy, and Mr. Kesh himself uses this analogy of a pizza. So he says the original source is basically the pizza. And because a pizza base, the margherita, which we all know, is threefold. It's got the base of the dough, and it's got the cheese, no tomato, and then the cheese. So it's the principal light, the transition light, and the matter state light. Okay, so the three things. And that is in everything. So this margherita is the core of all pizzas. And so it's the same, that the fundamental plasma is the core of every atom. Okay, the neutron, the proton, electron are all the same substance. Just the neutron is A, and then it splits into the electron, which is a tiny little field strength of its own, and the proton, which is that much less field strength than a neutron. So they're all the same plasma, just got a little bit weaker as they split, and then they create everything we see. And we see this trinity in everything as well. In the egg, we've got the seed, sort of principal matter, and then the transition matter, which forms the physical matter within and without the external shell. And the same inside a cell. You've got the central nucleus, then you've got the membrane and the clever stuff in the middle, the mitochondria, and all the functions, all the organs of the cell. An avocado, you've got the seed, the flesh, and the skin. And the solar system, the same trinity everywhere. You've got the central sun, the principal light, which behind that central sun in matter state, which we see, it is a plasmatic energy field. There are many theories now saying it's actually cold. If you go to the sun, it is actually cold. The heat we experience here is only a result of the interaction of the plasmatic field strengths from the sun interacting with our atmospheric field strengths. And that's really quite interesting, because NASA has shown pictures of massive UFOs charging themselves right next to the sun. And we think, how the heck do they do that if it's meant to be 10 million degrees? So maybe it's not. But they're right next to this central plasmatic, this big plasmatic field, and they're recharging from its energy. And Mr. Kesh says behind this sun that we see is the principal light. So it's like a portal of this principal light, which we can't see. It's just an expression in this solar system for us of that light, and therefore in every solar system. So it's a really nice unifying theory, this as well, that Mr. Kesh has brought. Just another chapter to the physics books. And to me, it's a unity of science and spirituality. He's really putting the understanding behind what all the spiritual teachers, masters, and clairvoyants have always said and felt and experienced. But it's been denied because science didn't understand why. But hopefully now he's starting to open the door and helping scientists understand why. And it is a disruptive technology in that way, but positively so. He's not going around saying, you're wrong, you're stupid. He's saying, no, look at it like this, try it, experience it, and then see for yourselves. And so how does this plasma express itself? It's simply, you get these magneticals, these are fundamental rays, opposite polarities, they're coming in and coming out, and as they marry, they tighten around each other, create this little spiral loop, which becomes a little toroidal ball, and that manifests as the phenomena that we perceive. And there's this little Coulomb barrier in the middle, which is where the forces meet, and that's the friction, the point of friction. And that's where the effect is felt, which is here. So in us, male and female, two different plasmas, magnetical, gravitational, male magnetical, female gravitational. They're just polarities, they're not better or worse, they're just what they are. So it's all physics, everything is physics, isn't it? And we talk about magnetism between people, and that's what it is. We've got our different polarities, and there's a natural attraction. And then we find balance through relationship somewhere in the middle. And that might be more towards there, it might be more towards there. That's the dance of life and relating. And hopefully we find a central point. And crop circles come and tell us the story as well. Many, many crop circles, talking about these geometries and these archetypes. And the infinity loop with the fingers there. The yin-yang symbol, that's another one which has always told us about this balance, this dance of opposites. And they find that central point. So the black and the white being the magnetic or the gravitational, always seeking balance. So here, this is a little ring magnet, which is what investigated as the true type of magnet, where the fields are toroidal, running in and out. So you imagine a little one and a big one. Then the point of balance, where you push them together, one will move, the little one will keep moving away. And that's when the bigger field strength of the big one hits the Coulomb barrier, the point of balance with the little one, and they keep that distance. They've defined, that's their field strength positioning, as Takesh would call it. So they define their distance. And I think the way the power applications are working is that instead of allowing these two elements to move, you keep them fixed, and you push them closer together, and then there's always a pressure created. And that pressure has to release itself somehow, and that is in the plasma flowing through. And if you catch that as, you can catch that as electricity. That's all electricity is this release of field strength difference between two objects. We're hoping, we're going to talk a bit more about power this afternoon. So in everyday life, this point of balance is found through temperature. You've got hot and cold, which is just different strengths of these plasmatic fields as we experience them through our physical sense. And where they find balance, it stops flowing. So imagine a bath, you're putting the hot water in, it feels hot, one end, cold the other. They find balance and it becomes warm, and then it stops, the plasma flow is stopped. Same with pressure, friction, you're pushing until you overcome this difference in fields, and then they find a balance. Charge, this is electricity. In a battery, you've got one positive pole is very high potential compared to the negative pole. And all you're doing when you're connecting them is allowing the current to flow, and eventually it just reaches balance, and that's when the battery is what we call dead. But it's not, it's reached its perfection, actually. It's found peace. It's found its central point. And then we go and force it apart again by recharging it, pushing all the current power back into that end, so it can do it again. So batteries are just finding their position of balance. Everything is seeking peace. Magnets are seeking peace. Put two together, they want to find peace, which is where they don't have to move to get out of each other's way. Healing, exactly the same. It's plasma, these energy fields trying to find balance. So when we are out of balance, we're usually gravitational. We've bled charge, we've lost energy, and there are holes in our system, in our aura, in our physicality, and healing is just about refilling those holes, replenishing that energy. And so that's about making whole again, which is wholeness and health and holistic healing, and it's making its infinity loop back to neutral. Jonathan will talk about medical more tomorrow. Solar system again, but this is kinetic balance, because these have their orbits, and because their orbits have found their position, they have to keep moving around each other to keep the dynamic of energy flowing between them alive. Otherwise, nothing stays still. Same with the electrons in the nucleus. Because the electron is teeny-weeny compared to the neutron, it has to keep moving to keep the balance of energy, because its position is fixed as well. So that's that kinetic balance being maintained. So what creates this imbalance? This is the question, what makes it all move? And so at the beginning I was postulating that maybe it's I think it's the mind. So it's either the universal mind just moving as life, as expression, or it's our mind also acting on our reality to move things and to keep the flow. And one really interesting thing about that innate flow or imbalance in nature was Victor Schauberger, who noticed, it's probably people more recently as well, who've been trying to do experiments with water where you do the water vortex, and they're trying to get the same vortex every single time, so they could then measure an effect over several attempts, which is the effect of how much the vortex would charge the plasma of the water, how much it would structure the water. But they found they could never, ever recreate the same vortex. However perfect the shape was, however identical the water was, the temperature, the controls, everything in the physical environment, they couldn't make an identical vortex. The water would always travel slightly differently. And that, to me, points a big finger to the fact that everything is in dynamic motion, right at the subatomic level and into the plasmatic, into the energy fields, which we cannot control. And I think it's the same with water going out of the plugs, the Coriolis effect, that nothing goes straight down. Everything is spiraling in life as an expression of this natural imbalance and flow of life. So nothing is ever really at peace. When it is, I suppose it's the big whisper has gone back into its stillness at the end of the Mahavantara, a long time. Hopefully not in our lifetime. But what keeps it fun here is that the field strengths, the harmonics, the field strength or the pitch of the energies we're exposed to from the cosmos are raising, they are increasing. And so that brings us up out of our more matter state obsession into a subtler way of feeling and being. And all this stuff is really good for, I think, helping people to understand that, the subtlety of things. So the shape, just the last thing, we've got the solar system with the toroidal energy always flowing around, seeking balance, and the belt in the middle. This is a digestive system. There's always a tube right through the middle, and then there's the transition state and the shell around. Same with strawberries. Human, the magnet, that was an egg. When an egg splits, it starts to create this little tube down the middle, which again is like that 0 point. And Mr. Kedge would say that there is always a little 0 point in everything. Even in our brain, he says the 0 point is our little point of the soul in the head. So we're learning about that. Jonathan will cover that a bit tomorrow. I don't know yet how he relates that to the essence in the heart, which we know about and feel, that little nous, that little solar atom. And then in the seed of the fruit, the flesh, the field, everything has this energy field, the vital field, the etheric body. And we as humans have our emotional body, our mental body, and our causal spiritual bodies as well, our 7 bodies, and probably more. But that's the Russian doll, isn't it? We are the Russian doll. We're not just the physical. And why does this matter? So, moving into the practical, this matters because Mr. Kedge has enabled us to recognize and then use these fields which are just beyond our normal perception in a way that is more subtle and easier to work with than the conventional stuff we're used to, which is chemicals, basically, these days. It used to be, say, herbs. Say in healing, it used to be herbs and more subtle effects to rebalancing the system, but now it's a lot of chemicals. But whether it's chemicals or even herbs, we can actually go into the subtler realm, like with homeopathy or biodynamic farming or plasmatic energy sources, and use this transition matter state, which carries all the information that the matter state holds, but readily available. So in health, you don't need to digest it through a pill. In agriculture, you don't need to chelate or break down the chemicals, whether they be natural, which the microbes do, or whether they be chemical, which is even harder job. And in power, you don't need to burn the coal, the petrol, or whatever to get back up to that transition matter state. And so we're just one step higher up the octave, really. And it's still in this third dimension. I don't think we need to think about the other dimensions necessarily. It's just a subtler state of information. And the water is carrying this information. As Luc Montagnier showed, and Mr. Remoto showed, and homeopaths know, water carries charge and information, which is information. And it carries frequency as information. So that's our conduit, or that's what carries this thing through all these applications. And so the GANs, just again, the principal matter, very tightly coiled, 3-coil principal matter. We're working with this, the GANs, which is transition matter state, slightly expanded, same coil, a bit bigger, and then the matter state is informed by this and is expanded further. So you've got your source pizza, this is our matter state pizza, and the GANs is in the middle. So we're working from here instead of here. So it's a lot easier. So we're not wasting anything, not destroying anything physical. And then just a couple of photos showing the expression. Can you see that? This is a pain pen in water, frozen water. Frozen water actually manifests the rays that come out of these devices quite nicely, because it won't freeze where these fields are strongest. So you can see just some quite coherent patterns of straight lines coming out of this pain pen into the water. Is that a bit clearer? Yeah. So if you froze that as plain tap water, it would all be messy. So whilst we can't see it, we can expose it this way. It's quite useful. So, nanocoating. This is the nitty-gritty. So this is going to help you do what we were just talking about and apply it. So nanocoating and nanomaterials. Nanocoating is what we do to a copper plate, usually, and a zinc plate, to expand the structure of the copper. Okay? And so we're starting with tightly packed atoms. And when Mr. Kesh found this way of creating this superconducting surface, this nano surface in the kitchen, whereas formerly it was a preserve of expensive laboratories with a lot of technical equipment that needn't have been. So we use caustic, which is a very strong, highly strong alkali, sodium hydroxide, NaOH, and the power, the gravitation, it's gravitational, it's a pulling force. The power of that strong alkali is enough to separate the atoms from the surface of the copper plate, enough for them to detach a little bit, but not quite enough for them to disappear. So they then resettle. So they detach a little bit, then they resettle here in a nice, slightly expanded lattice and create a black-looking surface on the plate. And it's not just copper atoms either. Here are elder physics, so they come off. Then because the copper is positively charged naturally, when the particles come off, they become negatively charged, they invert. And because of that, they can keep each other at an equal distance. But because they're negative, they're pulled back towards the plate. So they come back towards the plate and they stay there. So it's like we've got the flow. And so it enables this chi, if you like, the radiant energy fields around us to just flow through these layers unimpeded, whereas through the matter state it's very difficult. So it becomes a superconductor. And so it's some copper atoms, it's also oxides of copper and also some potassium and sodium, which is in the caustic solution. So there's a little fruit salad of frequencies, but mainly the point is that they're expanded and they let the plasmatic fields flow through easily. What a superconductor is that? Superconductors also let electrical fields through, but this one is highly insulating to electrical fields. It just lets the plasmatic, more subtle fields flow through. So that's why we do it. And that's an example of what it looks like on a copper coil. So we will talk about how to do that, and then why it works as well, when we're making the GANs. So you're not meant to be able to read this. It's more of an aid memoir, because these are handouts at the back, which we will give you.